So it's a dystopian novel. It was written in 1949 and is enormously rooted in that moment, but it's sort of enduringly prescient. It's quite short. George Orwell was dying as he wrote it, and it's concerned with the way in which totalitarian societies dominate your personal being and the trajectory of your society.
Has that dystopian vision, though, come true? One can understand it coming out of the Second World War and Nazism and Stalinism and so on. But for many parts of the world, actually, the last 70 years have been pretty peaceful, and democracy has flourished. Not everywhere, but in many bits of the world.
I think until recently, I'd always read it as being a kind of warning if you were living in a democracy. Just be careful. Other words, are people using obfuscating language? Are they using jargon?
That's only a debate right now,
really,
isn't it, about,
Absolutely.
information not being
Absolutely.
actually information, fake news and so on.
Yes, fake news, fake thoughts, fake feelings, I think, is one of the interesting things. And, of course, he was writing against both fascism and communism, and that was a very unusual position to have then. It remained relevant during the Cold War because many of the things that totalitarian societies do remain fairly enduring. They try and control ideas, they try and control feelings, public opinion, they try and control information. But now, if you looked at the surveillance issue, the surveillance that seems to me more interesting is that, when you go to Tesco's, a supermarket, they can tell if you're pregnant or not by what you're buying. That's to say, there is commercial commodification of the data that we give off entirely by living in the world. There's no way in which you can't give off this data.
And I wonder
it's sold.
Maybe that's what he failed to predict was that in fact it wasn't governments surveilling us. Actually, it was the corporations that would take over our lives.
Commodities don't take much part in 1984 because he'd just come out of the war, and in fact his wife Eileen had worked in the Ministry of Food. So nobody has anything in 1984. When they have a bar of chocolate, they've been lied to. It's got less chocolate and it's smaller than it used to be, but they come to believe it. So that weird cornucopia of things and choices that we now live in, that is not part of his world. I think what is part of his world is the emaciation of true sentiment. There's a very good bit that I found very poignant when I reread it quite recently, in which Winston Smith remembers his mother dying. He remembers that grief as being a complex grief, a true sorrow. The other thing, of course, is the 2 minutes hate, which is this extraordinary thing, which that feels pretty pertinent. Quite ordinary people turn into murderous people by practicing 2 minutes hate. That feels very relevant to now. I mean, people that might have led good and ordinary lives by ideological and personal persuasion, in a way, turn into loathsome monsters.